And so to work on something that's open source has more of a noble feel to it and moral trajectory. I think that's also really inspiring to some of these folks that could help bring them over to the Bittensor and decentralized AI ecosystem.
Welcome to TAO Talk, the weekly blockmate show recapping all the news in the Bittensor ecosystem. I'm your host, 563, joined always by my co-host, Brody from Onchain Outpost. Today we have a special guest, Ken from BitMind. How's it going, guys?
I'm doing
Pretty
well.
good. Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
No worries. Yeah, appreciate you hopping on last minute. Real came in clutch for us here, man. So do you want to do a quick intro? Just what got you into Bittensor, what's BitMind, that sort of thing?
Yeah, sure. So a little background about myself. I'm Ken. I'm the founder of BitMind. I was working as a recommendation system engineer at Amazon for a couple years. Always had been interested in crypto, got into it when I was an undergrad, and then I left that kind of AI position at Amazon to join Near. And towards the end of 2023, I was working on the AI strategy for Near, where I was going to all these conferences, meeting these folks that were working in DeepIn and decentralized AI. And I saw a presentation from Const, started talking to folks about BitTensor, and was really enamored with the technology. I think very promising, a lot of really interesting stuff being built. It was even more nascent than it is today, but felt like there was a really great opportunity to start something and build in this ecosystem. And then at the beginning of 2024, started contacting many of my classmates that kind of went the AI only route, some of my former colleagues, and we formed BitMind. We launched a subnet just about 2 months ago. We registered
Nice.
on July 29th, and yeah, we're now building in the ecosystem, trying to build products and working on our subnet.
Nice, man. Yeah, it's really cool that you had that early experience at Near, working with Ilya and all the engineers on that team. I feel like you probably got a pretty good perspective of where the intersection lived from between crypto and AI. So, um, probably prepared you pretty well for BitTensor and kind of getting involved and seeing where a lot of the BitTensor value propositions were and ultimately led you to create Bitmind. And you're doing a lot of good public. You're building a lot of cool public goods infrastructure and tooling, namely the miner the miner deployment application that you built, and I'm sure you got a bunch of other stuff kind of on the horizon as well. Um, but yeah, no, you're in Austin. Kind of curious what the energy like is in Austin. I know Manifold guys are down there, Akash guys as well. Like, what's the energy like in Austin, and what kind of keeps you there?
Yeah, no, Austin is a really great city, and yeah, I actually had the team visiting for like a week of in-person work a couple of weeks ago, and we met up with the Manifold team, and James said that the goal is to make Austin the Bitcoin capital of the world. So, like I know they're opening up kind of like a decentralized AI co-working office space down there. There's a lot of really interesting builders. I think from a regulatory standpoint, regulation seems to be open to kind of progressive laws and techniques that are used, right? Like unrelated to blockchain, but they just launched the uh, Texas Stock Exchange. So that's like right, really interesting, novel innovation that has been primarily on the Nasdaq and the New York Stock Exchange prior. So I think energy is really good. It's a little hot in the summer, but definitely, yeah, I welcome everyone to visit, and we'll go get barbecue, hang out, talk Pit.
Beautiful. 563. I don't know. Do you want to jump into the this week's events?
Yeah, sure. I think the one that folks were excited about was this Google event. Let me start sharing my screen. But yeah, basically, Dippy hosted this Google event at Google, obviously, and talked a bit about BitTensor. There was like the who's who of BitTensor was there for the most part. We had,
Mm-hmm.
besides Ken here, obviously, we had Mog from Tau Stats, we had JJ from OSS. I mean, Inference Labs, Omega, Wombo, Macrocosmos, Social Tensor, just great showing. And Yeah, it's really cool to see. Let me see. Here's a video that came up. Um, really cool. It's awesome to see that Bittensor is getting some more legitimacy. There's some big brands that are okay with just hosting this type of event. Yeah, what did you guys think of this?
Yeah, I think this is just a signal that people are craving in real life interactions. I know, Ken, you were at a BitTensor happy hour sponsored by OSS the other night or last night in New York. So I've spoken with a lot of people in the ecosystem as well. A lot of people love these types of things. You can shoot really dope content out of it as well, such as like this promo video. Um, Write really nice threads, recaps, kind of get you know involve people in a face-to-face setting, which I think is really important, especially because we're all trying to contribute to the same thing. So it's really important that we're all kind of acquainted with one another. Ken, if you want to talk about your experience last night and the energy in New York City around BitTensor, would love for you to share it.
Yeah, well, first of all, like, shout out to OnGod, like, coordinating this event in Toronto. Definitely a ton of FOMO when this came out, and what it happened Monday, and then he released this like either the day after or a couple days after.
Super
It
fast, yeah.
looked, yeah, it looked really amazing. Obviously, they had some heavy hitters from the BitTensor ecosystem there. I know JJ had a talk, and a bunch of subnet owners and validators, etc., were there, along with what I heard was there was a presentation by the kind of lead of Google's open source model development, which is called Gemma. So a
Mm,
lot of really interesting intersection of, right, even what centralized large AI players are doing and how that correlates to BitTensor. And then yeah, the reason I'm actually in New York right now, even though I'm based out of Austin, but Sammy from OSS Capital hosted a BitTensor event last night. There's a Masari conference called Mainnet going on right now in New York, and so there's a bunch of folks in town. But really, really, really amazing. I think getting to connect with folks that, right, you only talk with on Discord and you see them really active, but they have like, an anon PFP, getting to meet them in person, kind of discussing all of the activity that's happening on BitTensor and then what you're working on, right? There's now, 45 plus subnets all working on their own individual kind of track, and it's very hard to keep up with all the movement on top of, right, all the protocol updates that's happening on BitTensor. So yeah, I got to meet a couple of people from the OTF, some other subnet owners. Um, I talked with Sammy, familiar with Sammy, so got to meet up and hang out with him. And then also some, investors that are very interested in the BitTensor ecosystem and curious about kind of all the progress that's being made.
totally. Yeah, we need face-to-face interactions. This digital world is not enough. It's not the complete human experience. We need more. Working on it over here. But yeah, really good stuff from the guys over at Dippy.
Yeah, so what do you guys think about that? Like, do you think there's these Google engineers that are working AI and ML jobs just in their spare time on the weekends and stuff, mining on BitTensor? Is that what you think is going on here? Do you think this opens the door to something like that? It seems like this is the type of place you really want to start, like socializing this like work, right? Is these tech centers or maybe like academia? That's where you're going to find all the talent, I would say.
Yeah, I do think what I listened to your last podcast with the Macrocosmos team, and it sounds like, right, they've been able to recruit some Google engineers, and they just were able to bring on a DeepMind engineer. And I think, right, I have a background in Amazon. We have some former FANG employees on our team as well, and there is that sentiment of like, hey, these Google AI engineers or OpenAI engineers could mine on the weekends or their nights. I think there's a lot of really interesting problems on BitTensor that you can have complete ownership of. That's exciting for a talented AI engineer to try to build and just compete. And then when you stack that along with, hey, there's actually economic incentive involved here. And if you do win, you have this continuous revenue stream of TAO coming in if you create a well-performing model. Um, that's really, really powerful. But I think in the ideal world, you get those people to, instead of like nights and weekends, I think the real chasm will be getting them to work in BitTensor full time. And I think there's already kind of been a narrative, a sentiment against being scared of centralized control of AI and what they're doing with it, and kind of just like maybe mainstream media bashing of any type of bad release or problem that's going on. And so to work on something that's open source has more of a noble feel to it and like, I don't know, moral uh trajectory. I think that's also really inspiring to some of these folks that could help bring them over to the BitTensor and decentralized AI ecosystem.
Yeah, I think it's
Taupil.
I think it's
Cowbell,
it
cowbell.
goes a long way towards like breaking down those barriers, right? Because I know when I first heard about BitTensor, I kind of wrote it off because where in what world does crypto help AI? So it's like there's a lot of barriers to entry, and there's like a lot of barriers you have to break down in order to get past people's like like what they think about crypto and AI. So I think this goes a long way where you have an established player like Google hosting something like this. It kind of gives more legitimacy to people that are worried about legitimacy of BitTensor. So I'm excited about stuff like this.
Yeah, I think I actually had the same reaction when I first heard about BitTensor as well. There is a lot of fluff and non-legitimate projects in these like up and coming narratives. So in decentralized AI, you have a lot of projects that it's like, hey, what are you producing? Um, which makes, I think, the original reaction skeptical at first. But yeah, like, you know, once you look into it, and it is really hard, I think, to get a firm understanding of what is going on BitTensor, you do need to get tab filled and go down a deep dark rabbit hole. Um, but once you do grasp it and you see its potential, I do think it's really inspiring. And so if you can get people to cross that original hurdle of doing their own research and really trying to, dive deep, look through all the documentations, what the plethora of subnets are doing, I think it's a really powerful message that can inspire people and want people to come over.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's go to the next one. I know during the novelty search last week, Fish and Datora talked a little bit about this new upcoming subnet, and they have this nice little landing page here. This is another compute subnet, but it's the whole goal here is to make it super easy to onboard folks. So you can pay in TAO, you can pay in USD, and you can rent out these GPUs. And basically, you get the max reward if you're a miner and your GPU is being used. So it really incentivizes actual use. And yeah, I just think this is great. Have you guys checked this out already?
Yeah,
Yeah.
when Fish like revealed that on the novelty search, I was pretty surprised. I didn't see this coming at all. And it's super cool seeing kind of alternatives emerge, because there's already a computing subnet. So it's interesting to see kind of these competitions start beginning to emerge. And I think that's really healthy for the ecosystem, as well as having competing products along, as their own standalone subnets. So yeah, really cool. Interface is really clean. A lot of data and analytics looks like it's coming soon. And then yeah, you've got a bunch of different types of hardware that you can rent out or lease out. And yeah, excited for it to hit mainnet. I don't know, Ken, if you had anything you wanted to add on that.
Yeah, I watched the novelty search and was impressed but also surprised because right when you're like my process in considering, hey, what subnet should I build? Kind of part of the evaluation criteria is, hey, like what kind of fundamental AI problems are out there that isn't already a subnet,
Hmm.
as opposed to like, right, can we outcompete like something that's currently going on right now? And so because there's already a compute subnet, it was surprising, but I think what's really impressive about this is kind of what both of you touched on was a really clean consumer experience built on top of the subnet output. And something that I liked about it, and I think is a really important part to nail when creating these either applications or kind of derivative products that are built on subnet output, is abstracting away the complexity of kind of like the validator miner connections to the end consumers. So in this case, right, it's like it just says, hey, as a miner, you need to choose what validator to provide the GPU to. But then as an end consumer of the compute, you're not necessarily thinking about it. This is all aggregated in this interface and it's really easy to access. So it'll be interesting to see how the competition plays out. But kind of the beauty of Bittensor, there's always someone, an up and coming subnet, an up and coming miner, different competition that kind of forces you to move fast and get better.
Agreed.
Absolutely. Cool. Next one I wanted to talk about was Tensorplex Labs. We had the founder CK on a little while back. They just have a new feature update, which is pretty cool. They allowed for weight voting for their STAO holders. So if folks don't know, Tensorplex has a couple wrapped tokens on Ethereum. They have their TTAO, which is just the wrapped TAO on Ethereum mainnet, and then their STTAO, which is like a staked version of TAO. So that one's the one that gains rewards. And yeah, if you hold STTAO, now you can start basically saying what you want as your delegation. So you can go in and you can say, okay, I want subnet 24 to get 80% of the weight for my STTAO allocation. Subnet 1 gets 10, subnet 31 gets 10, and then you can just assign weight. So you can see folks have already assigned weight with their STTAO. And yeah, I just love seeing stuff like this. I know hotkeys, child hotkeys has really opened the door to what these validators are able to do. And I know DTAO is coming, but this is a great stepping stone to get us there and to give more power back to TAO holders themselves instead of validators. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think these initiatives are good, and I think that it creates an expectation for all of these large validators to begin to, you know, develop these initiatives and encouraging people to, kind of, um, you know, to take. It's encouraging people to, go out and be proactive about where they allocate their weights and stuff like that. But I'm generally pretty unsure of people's willingness to do so. I always come back to getting people to vote on just governance proposals in general. Like, say you're a huge Uniswap holder, right? Like, if I'm trying to go, if I'm just like a casual user and I hold a big bag of Uniswap, there's really no incentive for me to go vote on the proposal, right? And it's really difficult to kind of get people to take action on this stuff. I don't know what the exact numbers are, but I've got friends who are governance analysts, and they've broken down, all the different statistics and metrics around the actual percent of token holders voting on such proposals, even like really important ones, like really important protocol level, changes that are receiving. I don't want to, don't quote me on it, but like 5 to 10% of all Uniswap tokens voting on those specific proposals. So yeah, I think it's just another one of those situations where, it's great in theory, but will it actually be used? I mean, maybe not. But the initiative nonetheless is a really important initiative. And I think there's going to be a lot of validators that are going to start to, feel like their hand is being forced to create these types of apps and services that allow these people to distribute their weights. That's just my take. I don't know. I'm pretty bearish on people's willingness to go out and actively participate more than what they're doing. I think the user experience in crypto is already difficult in and of itself. And once you bridge, once you swap, once you buy the token, you're like, cool, now I have access and exposure to this token in this asset. And that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to stake it and forget it. And then, I'm going to exit my position in 6 months or whatever my investment horizon is. Getting people to vote on things and take action is really difficult. And that's a whole other conversation about futurarchy and basically creating prediction markets around like the outcomes of specific proposals. And it gives people an incentive to go out and actually vote. And there's cool stuff happening on Solana that's doing that. Profit is building a whole futurarchy protocol for MetaDAO. This isn't a Solana podcast, but if you want to go check it out, they're really, building some cool stuff over in Solana, and they're in the arena trying things. But that's a huge hurdle. It's a huge problem, and I don't think it's going to be fixed necessarily.
I just heard about MetaDAO last night at that BitTensor event. So, I mean, right, really interesting experiment going on there. Like, can Futarchy be a good governance model? And I think
Mm-hmm.
it's open, but it's super, super interesting. In terms of like what Tensorplex is doing, right? Like, well, miners, union validators started this, and I think it was a really great initiative. And then you've seen, right, two other relatively large validators do this with both Datura and then
Mm-hmm.
now Tensorplex. I would be really interested to see the statistics of like, right, what percentage of delegation is allocating weights, because I think in a traditional DAO framework, yeah, that's like the difficulty of DAOs, getting participation, getting people to vote, especially if it's on governance. Like a lot of people are like, it doesn't affect me. What's different about this weight allocation thing on BitTensor is that it directly correlates to economic incentive. And so I do think this opens up a lot of really interesting aspects, whether good or bad, but like, right, trying to allocate weight to your own subnet, um, maybe some like economic deals with large holders to get more weight to your subnet, et cetera. But high level, I do think it's a good thing. Really, decentralization, a lot of the principles are built around optionality. So like Brody, in one case, right, okay, I just want to stake my TAO, earn that rate, and not really think about and be an active investor. But then you could have other folks who are like, right, I really like this handful of subnets. I want to support them. I think they deserve weight. I'm also mining on that subnet.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I want them to get more weight, more emissions. So I think the optionality is actually really great. And then maybe the last, I think, I don't know, alternative benefit to this is that the detail upgrade is going to be like really, really change the landscape. And this at least allows some like small live testing, at
Mm.
least in kind of the social engineering aspect of this, to be seen of like potentially a little bit of how it will work. It's not right. I don't think it's exactly the same as detail, but at least giving all users the ability to kind of determine what subnets they want to support.
Yeah, it's like a proxy almost of how willing people are to go out and actually actively invest or actively participate in the network. So while it's not a one-to-one proxy, it's still kind of, there's still semblance there of are people going to be interested in speculating on detail tokens because the workflows are, kind of convoluted in their current stance. And I was talking about this with 563 earlier, but I don't know, 563, if you have any thoughts and
Yeah.
opinions on this.
Well, I think there's not really incentive alignment in this like current state
Mm,
because there's nothing to lose, nothing to gain from like doing a good job in saying this subnet deserves 5% of stake, this one deserves zero, because there's nothing on the line.
right.
Whereas when you have something like DTAO and you're early, quote unquote, early to it, to whatever subnet that's going to be huge, that you're like incentived. You're like there's an incentive there that you can gain massively. So yeah, I mean this is nice. This is definitely better than what we currently have with validators depicting what is deserving of stake. But I don't think you're going to get as much interaction and
Mm,
um, I don't think it's as honest or as capitalistic as it will be once detail comes along.
right.
No, 100%. You have nothing to lose, right?
Right.
Um, right. The two stakeholders in the ecosystem that, right, there's not only incentive to really do something really beneficial for the ecosystem, but also if you don't, you have negative effects as are miners and subnet owners because of you can get deregistered. And validators kind of have the same, it's built in, but essentially, right, you can essentially be on cruise control and there's no
Right.
negative effect, right, if your weight allocation is very like not properly distributed, but then that's what is very difficult to simulate currently, right? in, when DTAO gets implemented, if you distribute your TAO into specific subnets that don't perform, there will be a large negative economic implication for
Right.
not distributing your, TAO correctly into these different subnets, which will be super interesting. And like, I don't think anyone knows how it's going to play out, but will definitely be much watched TV when it happens.
Definitely. Wanted to highlight the new subnet that just popped up. Well, not new, but Bit Audio relaunched on subnet number 50. I think these guys were subnet 16 back in the day. Basically, what they do is text to audio, specifically text to music. So, really cool initiative. They have a front end, which is not here, but um, they have a front end that you can start playing around with. And yeah, it's just, what do you guys think of this? Do you think there's desire for this? I know there's a lot of like Web 2 text to music apps. So it is pretty cool that we have this decentralized version of that on here. It'd be fun to play around with for sure.
I'm pretty interested in the IP laws around all of these text to music um, applications, because
Especially
if you
open
could
source
get,
ones.
yeah, I mean, you could, train these models off of, however many hours of Drake music, and you can create an entire Drake song off of, out of AI. And I'm just curious how the IP legal aspects are going to play here in the next few years. And this kind of, maybe is kind of just a whole thing that Story Protocol is working on, or other people are trying to work on this, and like authentication of all of these, images, and AI detection probably plays a little bit of a role in that as well. And Ken can probably speak on that, but generally curious just about IP in general, and how stuff like this is going to kind of be in the crosshairs of all of those conversations.
Yeah. But in terms of bit audio, yeah, I feel like, right, new subnets popping up with different use cases. And I mean, maybe the best example is like when I remember when the protein folding one came out, I was like, how is this going to work? Right? Don't you need a wet lab or something to like identify like a protein? But then like looking into it, they've kind of come up with some really interesting ways to score and rank proteins that are created on that subnet. And kind of same with this, like I think, right, obviously a very popular space, a lot of kind of more traditional products built around audio generation and some even popular songs that have been created by AI already. Um, I do think to Brody, your question about like the IP around this, I think that's something that BitMind's actually really interested in as well. Um, and I think it's very complicated of how you distribute and track that type of information right now to even create a system around IP and licensing around this stuff. And so right now, our subnet is just classifying whether images are essentially real, created by humans, or they've been created by AI or touched by AI, modified by AI in any way. We have plans to expand into both video and audio, but the other expansion vector that we have is to get into attribution. And instead of binary classification of just real or AI generated, can you determine what model that came from, what version of that model was used, and if it's open source and kind of not only open weights, but the kind of training methodology is open as well? Could you also identify the data sets that were used to do that? And then if you were able to get to that detail of attribution on kind of content identification, then yeah, like where I've actually talked with the story guys a couple times, could you use that type of information to create, you know, a comprehensive licensing system around kind of IP in this generative AI world? But it definitely gets into a lot of really interesting theoretical questions, right? You know, how will that work if you just listen to a song and then create a song that sounds like that? That's how humans uh, kind of learn and continue to enhance and grow art. And so, like, does training on data of an AI model that is used to then produce a derivative output, um, will that require IP law? I think very, you know, open, existential, very interesting question of like how this will work. And very complicated. It's already super complicated, right?
Right. And it's an interesting turning point in the creation of art because, the streaming service really flipped the music industry on its head because now, there's licensing deals behind the scenes, and people are paying a $10 subscription for infinite access to all of these songs and all this library of music, whereas before you had to purchase a $10 CD or a record, or you had to purchase each and one individually, and then the streaming model kind of flipped that on its head. And now we're reaching a point where people can actually create completely different derivatives of existing music and access that for a lower cost than a streaming service even, or you can build other type of streaming models on top of this, like other type of revenue models, business models on top of this whole library of completely new information or new music that you can create super simply. That takes no time at all. It's simply just training the model to create the types of music that you want to create, and then you can create multiple versions and iterations of that music. So it just expands the whole entire world's music library infinitely, theoretically. And there's going to be different business models that emerge from that. So how the music industry actually changes from AI is such an interesting conversation. And I don't know, we can like talk about that for a while even, but I don't know. 563, what are your thoughts on that?
I just think it's pretty cool that we have new apps to play around with. That we have Bit Audio here. I'm thinking of it from like an end user perspective. It's cool that we have, you know, open source models where you don't have to go to some, closed source model where you don't necessarily know where it came from. You don't know what training data was there. So I'm pretty excited about it. But yeah, I do want to talk a little bit about, you mentioned it, Ken, on you guys' announcement for, yeah, I mean, like your comprehensive and open benchmark for detecting Gen AI images. So I wanted to bring this up real quick. Do you want to talk us through this a bit? This is looked pretty cool.
Yeah, would love to dive in here. So, right, something that's I think really important on BitSensor, but then in kind of open source AI in general, is to be able to evaluate the models that you're building against each other and determine kind of what fidelity, how well performing your models are. And so, right, the BitMind subnet is in the area of deepfake detection, essentially classifying, right, whether content is AI generated or was was not, essentially. We kind of searched, you know, cutting edge, state of the art academic research, and many of the studies, there was no, I would say, comprehensive general deepfake detection benchmark that was out there. The most comparable research that had been done in the space was a paper called Deepfake Bench, which uh, basically classified both images and videos, but only on human faces. And they did like a comprehensive, benchmark and showed that their model was state of the art and could identify both, you know, AI generated faces and real faces from a variety of different diffusion models. But because that was so scoped in just human faces, we needed to come up with a more, comprehensive, not only data set, but approach to doing it. So we took deepfake bench's methodology of kind of benchmarking, but essentially curated a different set of data sets that we used and we think is a comprehensive way of evaluating general deepfake detection. And so first we took a variety of popular open source data sets, both real and synthetic. So like ImageNet is a really popular open source data set. It has over 14 million images. MS Coco, Celeb HQ, FFHQ. These are like very popular image data sets that are often used in computer vision to train models for a variety of different use cases. And then we also took generalized synthetic data sets. Maybe the largest and most popular is called Diffusion DB. I think it just scrapes like Discord, um, kind of like Midjourney, like images and populates a data set. It's like ever growing. But maybe one of the most interesting aspects of this, and we spent a lot of time on this to make sure we're able to get a balanced data set, but there are imbalances essentially between real images and synthetic images in terms of the content that they're displaying. So, right, Diffusion DB has, you know, a higher distribution of like motorcycles and people on Mars and, you know, uh, women in bikinis and stuff like that, right? And so, right, if you're just training a binary classifier to differentiate real versus AI generated, the model could essentially learn those imbalances that is not what you're trying to differentiate between, but just you know, basically learning these other features that aren't important. And so what we did, we created this essentially it's it's an image generation pipeline which creates synthetic mirrors of real image data sets. And so what that uses, it's basically we use a image capturing model called Blip2, and then we use a content moderation model from Llama 3.1 8B. And so essentially what we do, we describe this real image in detail, clean it up with Llama, and then we send it to a variety of different diffusion models, Flux, Stable Diffusion, and uh, RealViz XL. And so by doing that, we're able to create essentially balanced data sets between real images and fake images. So there's not this inconsistency in the actual content between the real and the fake images. And we've added some of those synthetic mirror data sets to this benchmark. And we have this open on Hugging Face and also created a kind of detector class. So if anyone trains their model, they can inherit from this class and submit their model to our Hugging Face um, kind of arena. We call it deepfake detection arena, where they can benchmark against not only kind of state of the art models that we originally looked at, which is neighborhood pixel relationship NPR, UCF, which was the top performing model from deepfake bench, but then the framework that we came up with called Camo to see who does the best. So this is like a way to participate in open source deepfake detection without without having to register on the subnet, and is open for anyone to use.
That's pretty cool. So you took a bunch of real, like known real images and basically just had a captioning bot that said like what is in this image, and then you run it through an image generator, so it makes like a synthetic version of that image, and that's what you use as um, the benchmark here, kind of.
Yeah, so it's a combination of those like large open source popular data sets that are kind of widely cited, everyone uses,
Hmm.
and then additionally some of those mirrors that you just mentioned as well to
That's
this
cool.
data set. And what we think is like this is a really good baseline comprehensive set of data sets that can help evaluate generalized deepfake detection. And we plan on like updating this and creating a dynamic benchmark over time. Like, I mean, I think something that's really great about BitTensor is this dynamic evolution of subnets. You can increase the difficulty, and it's a moving target, right? Based on what the subnet owner's incentive mechanism is describing. And so I think we want to incorporate that same type of philosophy into our offline benchmark, and is a big strategy that we're trying to utilize to attract kind of top AI researchers that aren't familiar with BitTensor. Like, right, they're familiar with Kaggle, they're familiar with Hugging Face. Submit a model and see how it performs without any, and then hopefully we use that as our bridge to get them to start mining and contributing to our subnet on BitTensor.
Love it. It's really cool, man. So do you expect BitMind to have like to host a bunch of different models for the miners? Is that how that you think that's going to work? Miners are all going to run different models.
Yeah, so like right when we first launched, maybe can provide a little history here. Like when
Sure.
we first launched, we right like something that's really important, I think, for subnet owners is to provide miners with a very high performing baseline model that can be improved upon. Because if you're just saying, hey, like build a model, I think that's a really hard place to start for miners. And so we started with a model called NPR. And what we saw since launching the subnet 2 months ago, that there's been a 14% improvement in accuracy from that original base model, just from like organic kind of minor fine tuning or potentially even creating their, you know, retraining their own model itself. We actually don't know because we don't have the weights for the models that were submitted by the miners. But then kind of in parallel to miners organically improving that base model we originally launched with, we did a lot of research on right how to improve this problem in general. And our hypothesis was that because of the entropy of content, right, you have human faces, you have landscapes, you have pictures of pictures, right? The entropy is really high, which only kind of exponentially increases when you get into video and audio. Because that entropy is so high, breaking this problem down into smaller pieces and saying, hey, can you train an expert model to perform really well on faces? Or can you train a expert model to perform really well on detecting whether this image came from DALL-E or was real? Was the right approach to create a fully generalized system around deepfake detection. And we launched something called CAMO, which stands for Content Aware Model Orchestration, which is essentially a framework to do content detection of the picture, route basically based on that detection, route the inference to a specific expert model, which is what is used to eventually classify the image. And so right now we have three, I would say, three different open source models that we allow our miners to choose from as their, base miner to either start fine tuning or building on top of. And we're really excited about Camo because it introduces a way where you could create a brand new model that's, you know, very specific. Let's say it is just very good at detecting digital art, AI generated digital art versus real digital art, and it will have like really high accuracy from there. And you can just add it to the Camo framework along with the other base models that are the kind of the experts in that classification. Um, and that will really improve the generality, the generalization of model performance overall. But yeah, there's like a variety of different models you can choose from that are in our Hugging Face, and basically, yeah, easily downloaded to begin your mining journey with.
Really cool, man. Yeah, appreciate all the work you guys are doing over there. Killing it. Last one I wanted to touch upon today was actually Macrocosmos again. They released this new dashboard for their protein folding subnet. Really slick. Love it. They've had this really cool. It's just the child in me loves that you can actually play around with the proteins as the ones that they folded. Super cool. Um, just go and check it out,
Please,
guys. Just
please explain to us what's going on this dashboard.
I
560.
have no idea what's
Please
going
enlighten us.
on. All I know is with protein folding, there's like deterministic truth. Like it's pretty cool. Like you throw a bunch of compute at this protein and you try to minimize how much energy required in building it, basically. I think that's how it works. And it's basically just the miners competing against each other to fold proteins. I don't know what it means, but really cool. And they have they have this cool link to you can learn more about the proteins if you really want to. This is definitely above my expertise, but I do appreciate when folks build cool dashboards for me to play around with. So bullish. Good work, Macrocosmos team.
It's cool. It's like the dashboard markets itself.
It
I
does.
think Exponent Crisis, Tensorplex co-founder, he tweeted something that was like, "Hey, I'm not going to pretend what the heck is going on this, but this is a sweet dashboard, and everyone go use it." So yeah, I mean, if you build, it's just like you go build cool user experiences, you build cool visuals, you build cool products. People would go use them even if they don't even know what's being, told. So
Lesson in
good
there.
job, guys.
Yes.
Yeah. No, like I mean, I think this is like a great example. I think I mentioned this before of like I was like, how is this going to work? But right, activity unveils information, and this is like a kind of a crazy like big idea. And there's a lot of movement in general of like open source kind of bioinformatics, bioengineering. I think right, this new what CRISPR-Cas1 is now open source, and like what does that mean? I think we'll time will tell the utility of these types of things overall. But one, it's super interesting. But then I think the second thing that the Macrocosmos team, and I think a lot of the new subnets are really going after is yeah, this like super clean user experience. Like
Hmm.
how do you display subnet output in a way that is digestible, interesting, and easy to use for consumers? And I mean, this is just a dashboard, but yeah, like a lot of the analytics tools, right? TAO stats updated like in the past month. Now there's TAO market cap. Um, these are giant UI improvements to what
Hmm.
was originally in the ecosystem. And I think that that is actually going to be maybe the biggest unlock if you can allow consumer adoption and creation of these like very intuitive, beautiful user experiences that utilize BitTensor output. That is will be will be huge for the ecosystem if we can get there.
Yeah, it's like a good blend of consumer products and scientific products, research products, etc. BitTensor kind of caters to a lot of different cohorts of people and stuff like this. While we look at this, we don't know what's going on. Somebody who is in this field, right? They look at this and they can get excited about this because they want to contribute to this and build on this, and that's what matters, right? Like this isn't a product for us, but Dippy is, or the what other ones like manifolds like Sybil is, right? Like we can go use that, but I think it's great to have this mixture of different products that cater to different groups of people. So
Y- Yeah. No, Dippy is another great example. Like I don't know what it is about their cat, but it's just like that little movement. It's like the little like 2D cat movement. I'm like, wow, this is like when I went there, I think it was the same reaction when I went to this page. I was like, this just looks clean. Looks professional. It's easy to use, easy to understand. And it's great to see, you know, even though it's like super, super deeply technical that folks are working on their UX and creating great experiences for anyone who's consuming it, whether it be, yeah, I don't know, a biologist or someone who wants to talk with a random character.
Absolutely. Well, any other topics, you guys, for this week? It's oh, not that one. Well, that one. It's been great having you on, Ken. But anything you wanted to bring up? Any other things going on that you want to share?
Let's see, maybe I can just talk about briefly kind of like what we're excited about in the future. So, right, I talked about how we release Camo and our deepfake detection arena. We have some really exciting new releases that we're going to be launching over the the next couple of weeks. So the first one is that we're introducing Flux into our diffusion model on our validators. So increasing the difficulty of the problem where miners are now going to be scored against Flux models. And I don't know if you've seen it, but like 2 months ago, kind of it was open source released and it just produces extremely realistic looking looking images and you can put it in runway for videos. And then the second one is, yeah, we've done a lot of work on how can we make our subnet more robust and incorporating more complex binary classification metrics to be able to score our miners. And so we're excited about both those updates. And then maybe the last one is, yeah, the BitMind platform as well. So, definitely recommend everyone check this out, right? A lot of these kind of dashboards that we looked at on the call was about kind of consuming kind of miner dashboards, and something that we identified as being, low-hanging fruit, a very important problem to solve is kind of the miner user experience from a developer standpoint. And so it's a really easy place to train models, deploy them to BitTensor, and then monitor their performance over time. We were miners ourselves, and as we expanded, it just got difficult to manage. And so we are going to integrate Akash, expand to different subnets, and just like continue to roll out features. So if anyone wants to use that, definitely contact myself or anyone on the BitMind team, and we'll work with you on getting compute credits in exchange for feedback. So feedback for compute at BitMind here. But definitely reach out.
It's a great deal. Cool.
Love it. Thanks for
Ken,
coming on, Ken. It's been
really
amazing.
appreciate you joining today. Where should folks go if they want to learn more about your team, what you guys are working on, that sort of thing?
Yeah, so bitmindlabs.ai is our kind of is our website, which has access to we have 4 applications that are DeFi content related, a browser extension that is really easy to use. It also has, information about our subnet and then the platform as well. So come check it out, or join our Discord, go to the BitTensor Discord. We're always there. That's where information is disseminated in the BitTensor ecosystem.
Sure is. That's Subnet 34 for folks that didn't catch that. But yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to the TAO Times newsletter if you want an even deeper dive into this week's updates. And if you want to join the conversation, come join us in the Blockmates Discord. And we'll see y'all next week. Thanks, guys.
All right, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, please give us a like, subscribe, and turn the notification bell on for next time. See ya.